All of the excitement surrounding Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving teaming up in Brooklyn is of course going to be a bit delayed as Durant recovers from his Achilles rupture. We know this is a devastating injury that takes a long time to recover from, but what exactly is going on behind the scenes of the rehab process that requires so much time to get back from this injury? Well, in this video, I'm going to try to pull back the curtain a little bit on what exactly is going on during the rehab process for something like an Achilles tendon rupture. We'll highlight the key points of the recovery process and how they line up with the upcoming NBA season important dates. Make sure you guys subscribe if you like this type of content and want to stay up to date with future videos, and let's get started. Now, before we dive into this, it's important that you understand that every specific surgeon is going to have a different protocol for the exact weeks at which different things happen for an Achilles rupture repair. I don't know specifically what type of protocol Durant is following, and so this is instead going to be sort of a general overview of what the majority of these programs look like. Starting off with the first phase of recovery from these rupture repairs. In general, we can think of this as somewhere from the time of surgery to about the 1 month or 4 week mark. It's now been a month since his surgery, so this is about the phase that Durant is likely coming out of or recently has finished. This time period is all about protecting that surgical repair of the tendon and promoting wound healing. Most often, they initially cannot put any weight at all on that operated side, and so they're going to be using crutches. They also are going to be wearing a rigid boot or rigid cast around the foot that positions the foot with a little bit of plantar flexion or a little bit of the toes pointed downward. When the toes are pointed downward, this lessens the stress on the Achilles tendon to help, again, protect that surgical repair. This first phase is one of the hot points of discussion with Achilles rupture rehab protocols. The original way of doing this is people were put in a really rigid cast for weeks after the surgery. They weren't putting any weight on the foot, they were protecting it really well, and they certainly weren't moving the ankle. More recently, we found out that people actually do better the sooner you're able to get into more of that functional rehab of allowing some range of motion and allowing some weight bearing after the surgery. You'll see a wide range of time points at which the surgeons will have their patient start putting weight on the foot. Most often it's somewhere around the 2 week to the 4 week time period where they're allowed to have partial weight bearing, meaning they can put some weight on their foot. But there has been recent research showing that allowing the person to put weight on their foot right away actually might have some better outcomes. So a lot of variety here, but in general, think of this kind of first month after the surgery all about protecting that repair, promoting wound healing, and in general, trying to keep weight off of that foot and protecting it in a boot. The second phase of rehab with this repairs is now about starting to put some weight through that foot. They'll always start off with partial weight bearing and then over the coming weeks gradually progress to put more and more weight on the foot based on how their pain and symptoms are. During this time period, you're also starting to work on range of motion, moving the ankle. One of the key things here though is you don't want to overstretch the ankle and overstretch the tendon. Oftentimes they're not doing anything past moving the foot to neutral, and they're certainly not going to overstretch it during the second phase. But you're getting out of the boot more, you're starting to move the ankle more in this second phase. The duration of this phase again varies, but is oftentimes kind of from that first month post-op to about 2 to 3 months after the surgery. One of the cool things a lot of surgeons will do here is initially when you're put in that boot, your foot is plantar flexed and there's some sort of heel lift in the boot that helps do that. Over these subsequent weeks during this second phase, they'll actually remove some of those heel lifts kind of layer by layer to gradually allow the foot to come back to a more neutral position and get rid of that heel lift. By doing this, you gradually allow that tendon to take more stretch and load, as opposed to doing it really abruptly and all of a sudden. Looking ahead to when the upcoming season tips off in October, Durant will be around 4 months out from his surgery. There's a chance he could still be in a boot at this point in time, but I suspect that he'll probably have started to work his way out of the walking boot, which leads us into phase 3. During this next phase, you're working on progressing to get out of that walking boot. This time period is usually around kind of that 2 to 3 months post-op to about 6 months post-op, just to give you a general time frame of when someone is coming out of that boot. This is usually the time period when you start doing more ankle-specific strengthening exercises. Early on, you don't want to. You don't want to put additional load on that tendon, but eventually you have to start doing these strengthening exercises to help kind of rehab that repair. So this is usually happening again kind of around that 3 to 6 month time period. This means that when the upcoming season starts and Durant is around 4 months post-op, he'll probably just be starting to get out of the walking boot and get into doing more strengthening exercises around his ankle. But I certainly wouldn't expect him to be doing any sort of running, jogging, or basketball drills. Depending on which phase he's at here, he might be able to do some kind of basic light free throw shooting, but nothing that's putting excessive load on those muscles in the leg. Either way though, I think it's definitely reasonable for Durant to be completely out of the walking boot by the time we hit Christmas this year. The next phase is where we really start to pick up more conditioning and kind of running and jogging. You can think of this as occurring around roughly 6 months or so after the repair, depending again on the surgeon. But now you're starting to run, you're starting to jog, you're doing more agility drills, getting back to that kind of basketball conditioning. Along this way, you're still doing stretching, you're still strengthening those muscles in the lower leg. So I would expect that kind of by 2020, the beginning of the year, Durant will be working back towards running, jogging, and kind of beginning some of these agility drills. I'd expect then that somewhere maybe around that 8-month mark or so is when he's really going to be getting back into basketball-specific activities. Things like those hard cuts, those hard plants, and push-offs on those legs, things that are starting to really stress that tendon again. The All-Star game in 2020 will take place when Durant is around 8 months after his surgery, so this could be a time when roughly we'll start to see him doing more basketball-specific drills. Then it's just a question of working that tolerance, getting those skills back up to where you can successfully get back out on the court. But again, this, based on the time, as you can see from building this up, is going to be around that kind of 9 to 12 month time period. Hopefully this gives you a sense of why this process takes so long. You have to step through each of these phases because of how severe of an injury and how big of a repair this is. The Achilles is such a vital and crucial structure for all these movements in basketball that you can't rush this and you can't take any chances on rehabbing it too aggressively and pushing back too soon. But again, remember there's a lot of variation in this. By no means is this a specific plan that I know Durant's gonna be on, but hopefully this gives you a sense of kind of these general time points. So right now in Summer League, he's probably just getting to the point where he's starting to get off of the crutches and progressively put more weight on that foot. By the time the season opens, he could potentially be out of the boot and certainly should be off of the crutches altogether. By Christmas time and the beginning of 2020, hopefully he'll be able to start doing some kind of light jogging and aerobic conditioning. And then around the All-Star break, hopefully he'll be doing more basketball-specific drills. Let me know any questions, comments you have below, or ideas for future videos. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, we'll see you later.